Gentlemen, please welcome Matt Goodwin. Matt, really good to see you. Really good to see you. Now, you've obviously been keeping a close eye. I watch you on social media. You post a lot about the polls. What do the polls currently show?
Well, the polls nationally show that this movement is now averaging about 31% of the national vote, and it is heading into number 10 Downing Street with an overwhelming majority. That is what the polls are showing. So I think this is the most significant political insurgency this country has seen since the rise of the Labour Party in the early 20th century. This is historic, what we're seeing. And remember those local elections. That was the first time in contemporary history that any party outside of the big two had really swept the board. So this is really history-making stuff.
But of course, everyone's trying to write us off. So the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, oh, it's a flash in the pan. They won't get above 25%. Then we did. You won't get above 30%. Then we did. So the message to those other parties, to the big beasts, the big politicians, I think, is no one is safe.
Well, I would agree with you. I remember in the 2010s people saying during the Brexit campaign, you know, Nigel Farage would never get over 15% of the vote. And here we are with a party that's on 31, 32, or according to some recent polls, as high as 34% of the vote. And remember, David, this is before we've got to the Labour budget. This is before we experience more economic hardship this winter, because the sad fact about our country is food prices are going to go up. Energy prices are going to go up. The small boat numbers are going to go up. So my assumption here is the 31, 32% that we're seeing now, that's going to keep going up. I don't think Labour and the Conservatives have a viable response to reform. The Labour Party, according to YouGov, one of the most credible pollsters, just fell to its lowest level on record. You know, Keir Starmer and his party now are about as popular in this country as Meghan Markle.
Wow.
But Harry's back.
Yeah, wow, that popular. There's something else really interesting going on, actually. If you look at social demographics, if you look at C2DE voters, those of lower socioeconomic standing, they are switching in their droves to us, which is not necessarily what you would have expected.
Well, the alarm clock class, the people that have to get up in the morning, set the alarms, get up in the morning, go to work. Here's one stat about British politics that very few people know, and you've noticed it clearly. 40% of all working class voters are currently planning to vote Reform, which is twice as many who are planning to vote for Labour, which is more than twice as many who are planning to vote for the Tories. This is the most popular political party among British workers.
It's extraordinary. There's something else going on as well. I talk about the fact that people see a lack of fairness in this country. It seems that if you arrive on a small boat, you're treated better than someone who sets their alarm, as you say, at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, that goes out, does 2, 3 jobs, tries to put food on the table, for example. But another demographic change we are seeing, and this is what is thrown at me the whole time, saying, well, all your voters are old. They aren't. We welcome voters of any age, but the point is actually we're attracting a lot of young people, aren't we?
Yeah, I don't think the description of Reform voters that you just referenced is true. I was in Halifax last night with a group of 18-year-olds planning to vote Reform, and they were saying a lot of their friends at school, early years of university, they just can't publicly come out and say it among their peer group yet, but as the previous speaker just said, they will increasingly say that. Just one thing about this notion of fairness. I'll tell you what has really struck me about this country right now and about the Labour government, just briefly. This is a government in phase 2.
Was it 2 or 3 or 4? I forget.
I can't wait for phase 3. But this is a government in phase 2 that is using the British people's money, taxpayers' money, to bankroll private companies, to offer more favourable housing contracts to illegal migrants, to asylum seekers than they're offering to the British people. How the hell is that fair? It's not fair, it's not right, it's not just. We are the party, I would say, Reform are the party that are going to stop that.
So when you do your modelling, where is the vote coming from? Because I mentioned earlier on, when I go around the country, I am seeing something that I've never seen. I am getting working class people who tribally voted Labour coming to us. I'm seeing Conservatives, lifelong Conservatives, where their families for generations have voted Conservative. I'm seeing farmers who are so disillusioned by what the government has done. The fishermen, Keir Starmer giving away our fish for another 12 years. The whole point of Brexit was to take back control of our money, laws and borders. We have done absolutely none of that.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely. So I think the answer to the question is we're taking votes from lots of different places. Right now, about a third of the Conservative Party vote has simply moved over to Reform. Now remember, that's on top of a lot of previous Conservative voters before 2024 who had already moved over to Reform. Also eating into a massive chunk, about 55% of that Brexit vote is now standing behind the Reform Party. So what is happening? Let's just be clear because it's really important. When Boris Johnson won that big majority in 2019 and he promised everybody, I will lower the overall numbers, I will reduce immigration, I will control the borders. I'm just going to be frank with everybody because I think everyone in this room knows this already and many of the viewers may too. Boris Johnson and the Tories betrayed their voters, they lied to the country, and they set the stage for the disaster that we see around us today. I mean, put it just briefly, David, if you invited an architect into your house and that architect destroyed your house, you would not invite that architect back. So what's happening is Reform are really reaching into that big realignment of politics that Brexit made possible, but they're really expanding it. And that's why I think we are going to see something truly historic, because it's not going to be necessarily Brighton and London that are going to be rallying around Reform. Although actually I think we've got a good chance at the London mayoral election, but I'll come back and talk about that another time. I think it's going to be the small towns, the medium towns, the seaside communities, the fishing communities, the working class bastions, the Red Wall, Wales, parts of Scotland. They're all now going to send this big message to the establishment, the same message we can see flying off those lampposts outside, which is we've had enough. Enough is enough. We want change and we want it right now.
And of course, we've got massive elections in Wales and Scotland. We're polling currently at 28% in Wales. We're polling at about 22% in Scotland. This is unprecedented territory, isn't it?
Wales is going to be absolutely massive. What we're going to see next year is essentially the death of the Tory Party as a national party. Reform are going to do incredibly well in all of those traditional Labour areas, the home of the Industrial Revolution, across the Red Wall. I was also in Washington and Sunderland earlier this week. The energy in the northeast of England is through the roof. A lot of those seats are going to fall as well, I think. And so people have realised the Labour Party is no longer a party for Labour. It is no longer a party for workers. It is a party for virtue signalling, socially liberal, to be blunt, people who kind of hate who we are. They're embarrassed of who we are, and we're not.
Starmer knows he's in trouble, Labour knows it's in trouble, and yet they're like ferrets in a sack. They're fighting, they have no idea what they're doing, plucking policies out left, right and centre. One of the things they thought they would capitalise on is to reduce the voting age, because they think young people will vote for Labour. That is not proving to be true. I'm talking to 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds who are very militant, who will, when they're old enough, vote Reform.
So I think there's going to be a very interesting battle among those young voters. My colleague, Sir John Curtis, who many people will know, John's made the argument that giving 16-year-olds the vote, it's not going to have as big an effect as people think. It's not going to necessarily determine the outcome of the next election, but also they're not necessarily going to vote the way people think. And what you're alluding to is correct. I think particularly young men, actually. I think there is a sense among young boys that they're in a society and a culture now that it doesn't just misunderstand them, but doesn't really value them. We saw this with the adolescence drama on Netflix, this sort of constant contempt, particularly of white working class boys in this society and in this country. And I think that will find its expression with those people moving over to reform. I think Jeremy Corbyn and, you know, Jezbollah, or whatever your favourite word is, I think that's going to cause a bit of a problem for the Labour Party too, among some
I was
younger
going to say
voters.
with Corbyn and Sultana, I've said this before, fruit and nut. They are going to do something quite interesting, aren't they? Because actually they're going to peel off tribally very left-wing Labour voters. If they sort out your party or Jezbollah or whatever they call it, that could have a huge impact on Labour.
And it could also, by the way, really help reform. The more of this infighting on the left, the more that Jeremy Corbyn goes to war with Keir Starmer or Lucy Powell or Andy Burnham or whoever. By the way, just as an aside, I don't think Andy Burnham could necessarily win a by-election and find himself in Parliament. I think we're going to win that seat if it comes up, by the way. Just as an aside.
Yeah. I mean, so I mentioned earlier on that they're all on manoeuvres. There's no doubt Andy Burnham is on manoeuvres, and of course he needs a parliamentary seat. So he's looking at this kind of area. Gorton and Denton is one that keeps coming up. We've heard that possibly the incumbent member of Parliament may try and stand down for grounds of ill health. Burnham thinks that's a shoo-in. I looked at the polls. It is not a shoo-in by any means.
No, not at all. It's a bit like Runcorn, you know, where Labour came in very confident. They said this is one of our safest seats. Reform ended up with Sarah Poachin blowing them away, because we're seeing things we haven't seen before in British history. There is a mood out there in the country. I know you know it. You've been out there, you've been touring. There is a mood out there which is essentially, look, we want to save our country. We want to take our country back. And we are no longer remotely interested in the uniparty, in the two parties who have presided over the last 30 years, who have essentially almost destroyed our home. Remember, that's what Roger Scruton said, the English philosopher. A nation isn't just a set of documents. A nation isn't just what you see on your passport. A nation is your home. And many people out there are sick and tired of seeing their home being destroyed.
I would agree totally. We mentioned the economy, we mentioned immigration. If you were to put them in order, I will ask you the same question I asked Dan. What are the three big issues? Is immigration going to be the big issue at the next election? Keir Starmer says the one in, one out deal, which even on paper is a rubbish deal. It's failed for the third day in a row. They've got planes standing by with no one on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's 180,000 in and 0 out so far. I think immigration is front and centre to why people are voting reform. But let's also remember, this is also about people who are dealing with the biggest cost of living crisis since the Second World War. This is about young people grappling with a housing crisis on a scale we've not had before. And this is also about crime. This is about people looking out at their communities. You know, you will have read about the criminality in this area today, another really shocking incident involving a guy on the run with a weapon around a local school. You know, people are sick of this. They want the rule of law to be respected. They want criminals to be punished. They want them to stay in prison when they're actually given sentences. And they want the borders to be controlled. And they want that sense of fairness that you alluded to earlier on, that sense of fair play that has long defined these islands. That has to be upheld. Otherwise, the social contract will end up collapsing.
Yeah.
So we need to, I think, get back to basics. And that's what's going to drive this movement, I think, into that higher territory.
I mentioned, and very quickly and finally, I mentioned they are trying to caricature us, me, Richard, Nigel, the rest of us in the party, as sort of almost insane mavericks who are working against each other. That couldn't be further from the truth. But just in terms of now we are seeing defections. I have repeatedly said, as has Nigel, as has Richard, we don't want failed Tories. We want the best people to stand for this party. Now, Danny Kruger... Danny Kruger coming across is very significant for lots of reasons, because he will help us prepare for government. The Tories I have spoken to are absolutely shocked. They're devastated and flabbergasted that he has come over, and the press don't know what to make of it.
Well, Danny Kruger's a very, very significant defection. I've known him for several years. If you don't know who he is, I would urge you to go onto YouTube and watch his speech about the Christian foundations of our country. Another thing people don't know about Danny Kruger is he has been especially focused on opposing woke ideology, on opposing this new religion among the ruling class that would have us believe that little boys can become little girls and little girls can become little boys. Danny has been outspoken on all of these issues, and I think, you know, this movement is going to become incredibly powerful so long as it doesn't become a Tory tribute act, right? That's the critical point. So take the best of the best, leave the rest, right? We don't want the architects of the last 30 years. We want the people who have a strong track record of saying, look, we oppose mass immigration. We oppose woke ideology. We want strong borders. We want to put the British people first. That's what this is about, putting the hard-working, tax-paying, law-abiding British majority first. That's what we need to get back to, those core principles. I think Danny ticks all of the boxes. I know Nigel is keenly aware of that issue and that strategic calculation that has to be made. So, and you know, David, just to say, the fact we're even talking about preparing for government, the fact that I went to Birmingham at the conference and what people were saying is, well, look, you know, what are we going to do first? Constitutional changes with the House of Lords or leave the ECHR? And this party is only a few years old, but such is the momentum and such is the strength that it has, that we can now actually have a conversation about, okay, what do we want to change in this country and what does that look like? So I'm incredibly bullish about the direction of travel.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Goodwin.